When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Okay? So, reason why I put that quote up is I feel like with training, and this has happened to me as I've been a trainer over the years, is that we're not always ready for everything at once, right? And I feel like that's kind of maybe how it is with loaded carries, that as we continue to learn and grow, we'll be ready for bigger and better things, and that's kind of how I feel about loaded carries, is that it's not that loaded carries all of a sudden just magically were invented last week. We decided to do a comment on them. They've been around, but I think we're ready to start implementing new things, and that's our program is always innovative, and we're always searching for the best ways that we can help our clientele and better our program. And you'll see that quote again. So let's just start. What is a loaded carry? Okay, essentially we're talking about structural integrity under load. Okay, the ability to maintain that integrity with different loads and different positions. Essentially we're talking core training. Okay, we literally wrote this down. You essentially pick up a heavy weight, carry it for a specified time or distance, put it back down. That's it. Boom, we can all go home. Okay, that's loaded carries. Okay. Now if you need a little bit more science, we'll get a little more into it. So when lugging heavy objects, your core is immediately called into action to stabilize your entire body. Your obliques, rectus abdominis, and spinal erectors brace to protect your spine. Your quadratus lumborum and gluteus medius go into action to keep you from wobbling from side to side. Hip flexors like the psoas and rectus femoris and hip extensors, gluteus medius, and hamstrings work hard to provide locomotion. Okay, clearly there's a lot of things going on other than just picking up a heavy weight and moving it down the turf, right? So there's a lot of benefit with loaded carry. And then the other one that Mike Boyle talked about in some of the articles I read, and Dan John, it's essentially a moving plank. Okay, so think of it as really your highest progression on a plank. Okay, and so the why. Why would we implement loaded carries? Okay, so if we think about what is our philosophy on core training at VASA, right? It's right in front of you, but what's the word? Anti, right? Loaded carries do all of those things. Anti-flexion, anti-extension, anti-rotation. So I took some of this stuff from an article by Stuart McGill on why everyone should train their core. So, like you said, having worked with back pain people and high-performance athletes for over 30 years, I'm often asked to choose the most influential variable that links pain, yes, that's one word, links pain, and performance. My response would be an underperforming core. Okay, and I thought these two things were extremely important. Core stiffness is essential for injury prevention. Okay, we have to train the core. Core stiffness is essential for performance enhancement. Core stiffness is not optimized in bodybuilding exercises. Core stiffness requires dedicated training. Okay, it's essential that we have specific things built into our program, as all of you know who've gone through the internship, who've gone through our different trainings, how we feel about core training. Straight from Stuart McGill, low back specialist, core stiffness requires dedicated training. Thus, a universal law of human movement is illustrated. Proximal stiffness enhances distal mobility and athleticism, which is simply a fancy way of saying if you can control the core, everything that moves away from you will perform better and better and better, and your injury risk will go down and down and down. Okay? Very important that we were able to control our core. So conclusion from all that, loaded carries meet all of these requirements for both injury prevention as well as performance enhancement. So, what are the experts saying? We went and we tried to find as many articles as we could from Dan John, from Stuart McGill, from Greg Cook, from Mike Boyle. So, the article I read by Dan John, I just thought this, I summed it up with this one line, but I thought it was incredible, the different stories he shared, and we'll go into one of them. That he said he really called it a game changer, okay? The loaded carry does more to expand athletic qualities than any other single thing I've attempted in my career as a coach and athlete. And I do not say that lightly. And for those of you that came to the Dan John presentation, he doesn't say things lightly, right? No, but seriously, I thought that was a really big thing. And now, one of the clients that I've been training for the last about month and a half now, okay, he used to train with Brian actually, and Brian started to implement some carries, and then I just continued to implement these carries with him. And I thought it was so crazy that the other day he literally told me, this has been a game changer for me. those are his words. I didn't never talk to him about this. He said, I've just done them, and I've noticed that it's changed how the way I move. I feel stronger. My core is tighter. I just feel, and he's 65, and his movement qualities are going up. It's because of those things. Yeah, Steve Johnson. So, awesome stuff. So now this one, I love everything about this quote because it shows us a lot. So I'm going to read through it, and then we'll talk about it. So the next teacher was Stuart McGill. Stuart is like Gray, wise and always ahead of the curve. When Stuart started to do studies on strongman training a few years ago, I thought he was wasting his time. When he lectured on his findings, my initial thought was, who cares? However, something he said made me keep listening. As Stuart lectured, he began to describe the huge core and hip loads in things like yoke walks and farmer carries. Instantly, I recalled another great coach, Dan John. Dan always considered loaded carry variations like farmer walks and suitcase carries essential. I unfortunately saw them as silly finishers or grip work, two things that didn't interest me in the slightest. Suddenly, Stuart's words were hitting me like a ton of bricks. These guys carried. Loaded carries were not grip work or strongman events. In fact, when done well, they were probably the highest form of core training. Again, the teacher appeared when the student was ready. Okay? 2012, just a few years ago, that's Mike Boyle implementing loaded carries, okay? And now a few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to go to Boyle's facility, and every workout that we saw had loaded carries. Every single workout that their adults did, their athletes did, they were carrying at some point. For this reason, they consider it the highest form of core training, okay? Integrity under load. So, one more that I thought was really worth mentioning is this quote by Stu McGill. The asymmetric kettlebell carry uniquely challenges the lateral musculature in a way never possible with a squat. Yet this creates necessary ability for any person who runs, cuts, carries a load, and so on. The suitcase carry is another variation suitable for many advanced clients. So again, adding these in, we can't, you'll hear all the time that, oh, well, I squat. Well, I do compound movements. I do this, I do that. I don't need to train my core, right? Where here he's saying, we're getting benefits that you can't get from some of these compound movements. That's why it's essential that we incorporate training that is specifically hitting our core. So, I know I'm reading a lot of quotes, but I thought all of these had very valuable information on them, and then we'll get into kind of the nuts and bolts of these. So this one is one of Dan John's clients that he talked about, and I thought this was a really great story showing literally how this can be a game changer for your clients. So a few years ago, I worked with an athlete named Ted. Now Ted's issue was interesting. He was a solid power lifter and very good at the two Olympic lifts, the snatch and the clean, the snatch and the clean and jerk. In other words, he wasn't the wannabe, a beginner, a neophyte, or an internet warrior. Ted was the real deal. When he came to visit with me for a week, there wasn't a ton of stuff I could help him with in the weight room, a pointer here and there, and I was finished. So being finished, we went outside for a finisher. Would you rather do carries, walks, or sleds, I asked, which those of you who've worked out at Dan's, that's exactly what you do at the end of your workout. I've never done any of those things, Ted said. Good, I thought, I can help. Within seconds of his first attempt with the farmer bars, weighing 105 pounds apiece, he was a stumbling drunk. He could pull hundreds of pounds off the floor, but didn't have the stability, the cross strength, to handle more than a few feet with the bars. Next, I tried to get him to walk holding a 150-pound bag to his chest. He gasped for breath and nearly choked to death. Literally, his human inner tube had almost no range past 5 seconds. I'd found Ted's missing movement. Ted needed to simply carry heavy stuff. It's literally that simple, guys. A few weeks later, I get the call. Dan, you're a genius. My deadlift has gone up. Low 500s to high 500s. And I'm just thicker all over, Ted tells me. Humbled coach blushes, but nods knowingly. I'm not surprised. Again, in my coaching toolbox, nothing has been a game changer like loaded carries. So, now we're going to get into a few of the variations. I thought that story was great, as those of you who've probably not done carries and then really incorporated carries, you've probably felt some kind of similar difference in how they made you move, your ability to just feel stronger, and that, I thought, illustrated that really well. Okay, so now, you get a look at this.
Pictures of Layne.
Yes! Woo! So not wanting to
That's why we all came.